Thanks, Chris, for the intro. My name is Terry Bewick for Ford Motor Company. And we are today talking about the utilization of the PPG satin film for vehicle customization. There's been an ever-growing consumer want for low gloss aesthetic look on high-end, especially vehicles in performance vehicle lines. And at the time the study was done, Ford Motor Company did not have that in our product portfolio. Product attribute would be the quality of the material to match performance and durability of our best-in-class high-gloss clear coats that are currently in the market. No disruption or minimal disruption to the manufacturing process in the plant, whether that's in the paint shop or in final assembly. And this would also allow the customer to purchase directly from Ford Motor Company this product and to bypass the secondary aftermarket step during the purchase process. Back in 2020, the PPG satin film was brought to our attention at Ford Paint Engineering Group. And we did some initial screening of the material, looked very promising. The true kickoff of this project started in September 2021 with a big group meeting with PPG, Penske Vehicle Services, Ford Design, Ford Marketing, and Ford Paint Engineering. And at that time, a competitor OEM was displayed with the PPG satin film, and the marketing and designers absolutely loved the product and the look of the product. So that kicked off the qualification and full approval of the PPG satin film. In January of 2022, the first vehicle was shown to the public with the PPG satin film on the Mustang there, the green Mustang, at the Barrett-Jackson Auto Show in Las Vegas. Had extremely positive response from the audience, and that really pushed forward the qualification testing. In that time, in that year, the material design templates were initiated. The strategy needed to be aligned on what edges were to be wrapped, what edges were not to be wrapped. And after numerous discussions and meetings, the design strategy was initiated. As you can see here, with the blue shown, you can see an example of a strategic plan would be with the mirror shell. How would we wrap the mirror shell? That curvature is very complex. Do you wrap it? Do you not wrap it? Same thing as just an example of part-to-part interaction. How do you wrap that edge or not wrap that edge? In this case, you can see, not the greatest picture, but recessed edge there at that part-to-part. In May of 2023, the Mustang qualification approval on the PPG satin film was approved. And that included the clear coats on our body paint, as well as all the add-on parts that go on the S650 Mustang. To jump on board shortly after, the Bronco program team saw the look, and they wanted to introduce that on the Bronco. So following the same path, the design templates were initiated on the Bronco. And again, mirror shells, how are you going to wrap the mirror shells? And also in that right there on the top of the roof, that kind of on top of the D pillar, there's a cut line. And so the alignment was needed and kicked off at that time to fully strategically have alignment for these design strategies for the PPG satin film. In January of 2024, there was a social media release for the Mustang, which Gareth will show. And February of last year, the Bronco qualification was approved. Again, over our metal high bake clear coats, as well as the add-on parts. May of 2024 of last year, the design templates were finalized. And here's just one example of, in addition to the strategic implementation, the corners on a wrapped edge, in this case on the hood, there's a recessed cut in the corners to alleviate any type of wrinkle, pucker, delamination around that corner. August 2024 of last year, the Mustang achieved okay to buy with the PPG satin film and was available for consumer purchase. October of last year, the Bronco designs also followed suit, and the final design strategy was finalized. And here's two examples. The door pocket on the swing gate that was deemed feasible to be able to be wrapped. There's some questions on that, as well as the sport tubes on the roof rails were deemed not to be able to be wrapped due to substrate bleed through the satin film. February of this year, Bronco was deemed okay to buy and available for consumer purchase for the consumer. This next slide is just an example of the product and the change you see with high gloss versus low gloss satin film. The product's available over every color. And here's just an example of the Bronco color palette. And you can see, especially with dark metallics, that aesthetically it's a very big change with the satin film versus the high gloss. And the overall feedback has been very positive for this niche market. At this time, I'd like Gareth to take over and do a deep dive into the actual satin film itself. Okay.
Thanks, Terry. I thought I'd start off by just explaining a bit about how PPG got involved in this, because obviously we're known as a liquid coatings company. But back about 7-8 years ago, we'd started doing some work with a little company based in Columbus, Ohio, that had this aero film technology, trying to explore some opportunities to sell that into our market. And along the way, around about 3-4 years ago, we bought a company in Germany called Vorwerk that happened to have a small films business within it. So 2 years ago, we actually decided to formalize this films activity, and we acquired a controlling interest in the films business of Aero, and combined those two entities together to form PPG Advanced Surface Technology. And that's the organization that is designed to deliver films for the PPG business. The reason we did this, and we look at films really as just another way of putting a coating onto an object, like a vehicle, but it brings with it some fairly significant advantages over liquid paints. For instance, you can reduce the VOCs at the point of use. You significantly reduce the carbon footprint, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. And in some ways, it's actually easier to do design and customization with a film than it is with a liquid paint. And you can actually build in functionality, and there's a little bit of functionality built into this film that we'll talk about. So that's why we got into it, and we have a case study. It's not really what we're doing in this particular project, but if you were to use a film instead of a liquid coating to do a contrast roof, you will actually reduce the carbon footprint by around about 60%. So strategically, this is something that's very interesting to PPG, which is why we've entered this films market. Right, so I want to talk a bit about what this film technology is. I think there's a lot of people in this audience that are familiar with liquid coatings for vehicles. This is not that dissimilar in terms of chemistry. So we actually start out with a polyurethane core. So we'll have around about 6 mils of polyurethane. That's the middle bit on this picture. And that's actually what gives it the critical That polyurethane also has all the normal UV absorbers and so on that you'd have in there, so it gives a lot of durability to the film. And it also gives a lot of the mechanical properties. And when we talk a little bit later about the testing we did, we'll see some of the advantages of this film structure. And what we do is we take that polyurethane, and then in a continuous process that I'll show you a bit later, we apply a clear coat on the top. And that's what gives us the chemical resistance, and also allows us to modify the characteristics of the film. So that's how we make the matte finish that's used in this particular project. That clear coat also gives it some self-healing properties. So we can actually tailor the performance of the film by modifying that clear coat. And we have examples that run from 8 gloss. We're using around 20 gloss in this project, but we can also go up to full gloss by modifying that top coat. We then take that top-coated polyurethane and we apply a pressure-sensitive adhesive, and that's tailored to give the right application installation characteristics to the film. Okay, and that's either coated on the back, or we can actually laminate it in a separate process, and that gives us the full stack. The other thing we can do, and this is where I say you can start to tailor this. If you want to, you can actually then take a conventional automotive color coating, and we tweak it a little bit to make it a bit stretchy so it works in a film environment. But we can add a layer of that into the film, and now we can do aesthetic changes and color changes at the same time. Okay. And theoretically, we could also add graphics in and another other customization features. Okay, so as I say, I think you're all pretty familiar, I guess, with liquid coatings. I am. That's what I did for 30-odd years with cow's blades and media mills. But this is actually the equipment that we use to make a film. I thought I'd go through this a little bit. This is probably one of the newest coating lines in the world. This was actually turned on 2 weeks ago in our plant in New Albany in Ohio. So the way we make film, we start off with that polyurethane core, typically 5 to 6 feet wide, maybe 1/4 of a mile long. And we put a roll of that onto this piece of equipment that you'll see on the right. There's lots of rollers in there, and the reason we have those are actually to make sure that film is tensioned correctly and very, very accurately aligned. So it goes through all those rollers, gets itself aligned. If needs be, we can actually modify the surface chemistry before it goes into the coating head, which is this room on the bottom left-hand corner. Okay, and you actually see one of the coating heads sitting outside on that cart that gets wheeled in, and in a continuous process, we feed the coating into that coating head, and it gets applied onto that roll of polyurethane as it runs through. Okay, and because it's very, very accurately controlled in terms of fill build, flow rate, and the deposition on that film, it gives us a very, very even coating. Okay, and that's actually why, if you look at the finish on this matte film, it's significantly more even than it would be if you were using a liquid spray applied coating. Okay, it then goes into this white box. It's not there for any secret reason. It goes into there because of noise abatement. But in there is a long oven, and we can control the temperature in stages, and we control the residence time by the feed rate of the film. Okay, and it comes out of the end of that oven and drops back down into an assembly very similar to the unwind assembly that you see there, and it gets wound back up into a finished film. At that stage, we can also then potentially add a cap sheet if we need to protect it for further processing steps. But that's basically how we make a film. I thought it'd be interesting to show you that because it's, say, very different from a liquid coating. Okay, so we take that. Actually, I will do a big reveal here. This is what it looks like. So this is the web width, and that goes through the line that way. I think there are some samples that were going to be passed around of the final product that gets applied to the vehicle. Okay. Now we took that, and this is a very, very big collaborative effort between PPG and Ford, going through and working through all of the standard coatings tests that you would do on a liquid coating. And we also did some other tests that I'll show you that were more typical for films, but you'll see that it passes the test that you require for an OE coating. In fact, it does better on a number of things. The balance is slightly different from a liquid coating. So for instance, stone chip is extremely good with this film because it has that absorbing layer of the polyurethane. Things like abrasion resistance is also excellent. And you can also, because it's self-healing, if you do get some micro scratches, you warm it up in sunlight, it'll actually fade, those scratches will actually heal themselves. As I said, we also do some slightly different kind of adhesion tests. So to make sure that the performance of that adhesive is correct, we'll do things like peel adhesion, which you wouldn't typically do on a paint. We also do the crosshatch, but this is an adhesion test that is more typical for a film application. And we go through all of the standard weathering tests. So it's been through all the weatherometer, and we've got panels out in Florida, and it performs equivalently to a liquid coating. So it has all the durability characteristics for an OEM warranty kind of approval. Okay. I think this was referenced earlier. I wanted to show these because I think it looks really cool. This is the social media launch that happened last year. I did really want to have a vehicle just here, but they wouldn't let me put one there. But I've got lots of pictures because I just think, and especially this blue, it's a very, very cool finish. There's some more close-ups of various different parts of the vehicle. So this is 2025. We can modify that. We can go down to about 8. We can go up to full gloss. So customization is relatively straightforward with this film technology. Okay. Last one thing I want to touch on, and I think Terry mentioned it briefly in his introduction. One of the biggest areas of collaboration in this project was actually the design of the templates. So the way this is applied is you actually have pieces of film that are cut out to each individual panel. Okay. And that's applied wet. So you put a thin layer of water on the vehicle and you float the film on that layer of water until it's in the right position. And then you squeegee the water out and it sticks down. Okay. But there are a lot of design and engineering considerations when you design those templates. So they're actually designed to within a millimeter, but you have to think about the reliefs. So at the edge of the panel, do you want to actually show a little bit of the gloss for styling reasons or not? Under the door handles, do you want to have those glossy or matte? Again, styling. There are some engineering considerations because obviously as a film, if you stretch it too far, you make it thinner. So you're going to thin that adhesive. So you can't leave too much stress in the film, otherwise it might fail after you put it under durability exposure. So a number of considerations as we work through with the teams at Penske, with Ford and PPG, to actually make sure we dialed in those templates so they perform both aesthetically and from an engineering perspective. And as you see, the results of that are a very, very cool effect. So I'm going to hand back to Terry just to talk about where we are and what we do next.
Thank you.
Slide.
So this section is going to be described about Penske and the installation, high-level installation process overview being done right now. Penske Vehicle Services, they have a brand new facility in Auburn Hills, Michigan, where this process is in place right now. But prior to any type of installation and application, the vehicle needs a thorough review from a paint perspective. And Penske will do any type of polish, buff, detailing, minor paint repair if required. At the facility, it's a very large clean room with ample space for the operation. Excellent lighting's in place. The process is 100% manual. Gareth mentioned, you can see in the photo, it's a wet install. So you can see on the left side of the photo, the wetting solution being applied underneath the film, followed by multiple squeegees to get all the moisture out of the film itself. Multiple squeegees are required. There's a post-install inspection, and Penske has implemented another inspection and quality review 24 hours after the installation. Lessons learned at Penske. The vehicle needs to be pristine prior to any application step. every type of defect on the painted surface or substrate will be magnified with the film. The film strategy for wrapping edges at Penske is based a lot on part location, and the scope at Penske is no disassembly. So doors, hoods, we are wrapping edges. Fascia quarter panels that would need to be disassembled to wrap the edge are not in scope. If the part edge, panel edge is wrapped, a secondary piece of tape, we call it trap tape, is applied the same gloss, and it's actually in person, it's very hard to even see, but for secondary reinforcement to mitigate any risk of adhesion loss over time. And Penske has initiated this post dwell time review after 24 hours, and they feel it's extremely critical for quality prior to the vehicle leaving for the dealership, that they get a fresh eyes look on the vehicle. And if any type of moisture entrapment has occurred over that 24 hours, it will be evident, and that piece of film would have to be replaced. On Mustang specifically, there are 22 pieces of film that are applied to the vehicle, and Bronco's very similar. Positives of the product. Overall, it launched as a full unit film, and it brings that same goal and aesthetic look to the consumer without bringing to Ford the manufacturing challenges and the complexity that matte clear coat paint would bring to an assembly plant and paint shop. The satin film naturally acts as a paint protective film. As you can see here in this photo, these two photos, this vehicle was ran through the Michigan Proving Grounds up in Romeo, and it went through the woods and extreme brush. And you can see the molded in color wheel flares and mirror shell, that they're very, very scratched up. Yet the satin film is still in pristine condition. And you can even see in the above the wheel flare, there's actually a dent and ding into the sheet metal, and it must have hit a big branch. Yet the PPG satin film showed its robustness and stayed intact, even with a heavy dent. At this time, the film has the ability to go over any type of paint system that we have tested to date, or in substrate. Zero post heat is required for the process, which reduces that variability. The product is marketed as self-healing and removable. Gareth mentioned after, there's some micro scratches present, it will self-heal itself over time with exposure to sunlight, and is removable. If the consumer has purchased this product, and after 10 months, a year, they want to go back to their high gloss finish, the product is removable, and the vehicle will be in the design intent as originally coming out of the paint shop in the assembly plant. As stated, it allows the consumer to directly purchase from Ford instead of having a secondary purchase price at an aftermarket center, and includes the Penske warranty and repair service agreement, which they have an agreement and partnership as well with PPG on 100+ collision centers across the United States. Process limitations of the product. And this is the big one. It's very time consuming. It's 100% manual install at this time, and 6 hours by 3 operators, 18 man hours per unit, plus the 24-hour dwell time review. A facility investment is required, minimal clean room and improved lighting. All defects under the film are magnified. And here's just 2 examples I mentioned before, but here's an example of dirt and paint that was not noticeable prior to the film was applied. And a substrate defect, a metal dimple, we call it, was magnified after the film was put on. This is a highly skilled operation, and the workforce needs to go through, in the industry, about a 30-day training program for this type of material. It's not something that you can just have someone get trained up for in a day or two and be put on. It's a lot different than any type of graphic or detail that we currently are using in our Ford assembly shops. And in general, the execution is challenged based on the design and vehicle complexity. If the vehicle has a lot of curvature, a lot of character lines, it's going to make the installation much more complex. If the vehicle is a little bit more boxy, less complex, it's going to make the installation slightly easier. Where are we now? Currently, if you go on Ford online, you can purchase your new Bronco or your new Mustang, and this is an option for the consumer to purchase directly. There's communication with the dealers ongoing. The more the dealers know about the product, the more the consumers will know, and they will not be blindsided by any of the product attributes or issues. Penske, the state has a brand new facility in Auburn Hills, Michigan, to support this project as well as other Ford projects. And next steps, the Ford Bronco Raptor qualification is in process as I speak, and a variant of the satin film, a high gloss version, which will act as a full body PPF, also is testing in process. And that would be going over the Mustang and Bronco as well. And would act as a full body PPF without the low gloss aesthetic look. At this point, I'd like to open up the forum to any questions and discussion.
All right, let's thank our speakers. Well done. And there's a lot of engagement. 23 questions so far in the chat. Let's see if we can do that in 5 minutes. So for those of us here in the room and online, if you would please take a moment to vote for the questions that you think are most interesting that you want to hear about. That way we can help prioritize them. That's a great feature. While everyone is voting, I'll start with one that looked interesting. It was one that I had as well. So whoever asked that, great question. The question is, how does PPG or Ford quantify the self-healing performance? Is there a standard test?
Most of it is done visually, so you can actually put in use like a brass brush it, you can see them, then you warm it through. Actually, just put some warm water on, and you can actually see them, the scratches disappearing. So it's really a visual test. You can do it numerically if you want to look at the reduction in gloss through an abrasion test, and then sort of look at the recovery. Yeah. So most of it's done visually.
Is that visually? Okay, sure. All right. Question so far that got the most votes is there a path forward to automate the film application?
Yes.
Binary question. How far out are we from automation?
Not a lot of years. I mean, I would say year or two.
Okay. Yeah, excellent. The next question on the list is, how do you protect the edges of the film to prevent moisture uptake within the film, which could adversely affect the durability?
Full squeegees. Right? It's with 100% manual squeegee and then further squeegee. So that's the process.
And one of the things we do, obviously, I guess most people are familiar with the kind of testing we do for durability. Like I showed all the Ford tests. We will actually run those both on a full panel and a half panel. So we'll actually do everything with that edge exposed to make sure that you don't get any moisture ingress that allows it to pop up.
Yeah.
Okay. So the one thing you will see is if you've got a really, really light car, you can sort of get some, as with any edge, a little bit of dirt buildup that will wash back off. But we actually test it. The adhesive is designed so that it doesn't fail on an edge.
Yeah, that was going to be my follow-up, right? It's not just the the hard coat. It's not just the film, but it's the adhesive factor there for sure.
Yeah.
Next question is, how do you do touch-ups, and to what extent can the satin self-heal in that regard?
So theoretically, you could touch it up with a refinish coating. On this probably be a very difficult thing to do, and it wouldn't heal. The healing is a surface effect, so say light scratches. That's why we use the brass brush. I think the most extreme is probably the photo that was shown in Terry's presentation. We don't recommend driving it through a hedge, but everybody seems to insist on doing that. So touch-ups in the sort of conventional sense, if you get a cut through it, it's not going to heal the whole film. And in a refinish environment, essentially what you do is you'd repair the panel conventionally, and then actually just get a piece of film and stick it back on.
Yeah. And so one of the questions that did come up then is, what's the level of skill and training that is needed to actually do that manual application of a film, right? Does it have to go to Penske, or is there someone else that would be skilled in applying that?
There are skilled people out in the market for applying film.
Yeah, sure. For the clear coat top layer, what is the chemistry and how is the matte effect achieved?
It's fairly conventional, sort of. It's not that dissimilar to what you'd see in refinish, and I'm not going to answer the second question.
Sure. Understood. All right, I think we have time for one more. Several of these were answered. Satin film or sprayable satin low gloss clear coat, which is the best production capable product or process?
I mean, I think Terry mentioned this is at the moment quite a manual process, so it's not, it's not at the speed of an OEM paint line. So if you want high volume, then liquid paint is obviously more capable. But this as a finish looks significantly better. So it's much more, as I said, the way that we coat it, very, very highly controlled. There's no mottle in this that is extremely even. And the actual longevity on the vehicle is better than a liquid paint. So there's benefits. I think Terry mentioned there's benefits. There's some compromises.
Yeah.
Okay. But I think over time, as the technology develops, those compromises will become less.
Yeah, sure. And then maybe last question, just from knowing a little bit about the films, wraps, and PPF, et cetera. This is a question in here is, what about greater than 5 years, right? If the film is left on the car, how does it do for an extremely long time, as opposed to someone who wants to just take it off to change the color after a year?
This has got the durability. I think put some durability testing up there, but this has got the same durability as a 2K urethane paint.
The Penske warranty is 10 years.
Yeah.
10-year warranty. Excellent.
And we've had vehicles with this kind of technology out for longer than that.
All right.